I'm Rachel, 35 years old, and I never thought my own investment property would become the battleground for family betrayal. When my parents died, I let my younger brother Mark live in my house rent-free to help him get back on his feet. I was happy to support him through tough times. That's what family does, right? But when he married Brittany after knowing her for just 3 months, everything changed. What started as a generous gesture spiraled into the most explosive confrontation of my life. Before I dive into this wild story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever dealt with entitled family members who took your kindness for weakness. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. I built my real estate portfolio from absolutely nothing. After college, I worked 2 jobs while saving every penny for my first property investment. By 30, I owned 3 rental properties and had established myself as a respected name in local real estate circles. I worked hard for everything I had, often sacrificing weekends and holidays to renovate properties myself instead of hiring contractors. My brother Mark and I grew up extremely close. Just 2 years apart, we were each other's best friends through childhood. He was always the charming creative one, while I was more practical and business-minded. Our dynamic worked well. I'd make the plans and he'd add the fun. Our parents raised us to look out for each other, emphasizing that family bonds were sacred. Everything changed 2 years ago when our parents died suddenly in a terrible car accident on their way home from their anniversary dinner. The loss devastated us both, but we processed grief differently. I threw myself into work, expanding my business as a way to honor our parents' memory. They had always been proud of my entrepreneurial spirit. Mark, however, spiraled. He lost his graphic design job after repeatedly missing deadlines, started drinking too much, and burned through his savings in less than 6 months. When Mark called me crying from a bar saying he couldn't make rent on his apartment, I didn't hesitate. I had just finished renovating my newest investment property, a lovely 3-bedroom craftsman-style house in a nice neighborhood. Instead of putting it on the rental market, I offered it to Mark. He could live there rent-free for 1 to 2 years while he got back on his feet. The property taxes and utilities would be my responsibility, essentially giving him a chance to save money and rebuild his life without the immediate pressure of housing costs. "This isn't forever, Mark," I'd said when handing him the keys. "Just until you're stable again. Maybe a year or 2 at most." "I promise I won't let you down, Rach," he'd replied, hugging me tightly. "I'll be back on my feet before you know it." For the first year, things went according to plan. Mark found a new job at a marketing agency, started attending grief counseling, and seemed to be healing. We'd have dinner together weekly, and he'd proudly show me the money he was saving for eventually moving into his own place. Our relationship was stronger than ever. Then Brittany entered the picture. Mark met her at a company event. She worked for a client of his agency. He called me the day after they met, sounding more excited than I'd heard him in years. "Rachel, I met someone amazing last night," he gushed. "Her name is Brittany, and she's absolutely perfect." I was thrilled to hear the happiness in his voice. When I finally met Brittany a few weeks later at a dinner Mark hosted at the house, my first impression was mixed. She was undeniably beautiful, tall blonde with an infectious laugh that seemed to captivate my brother completely. She complimented the house repeatedly, especially the renovations I had done. "This place is gorgeous," she'd said, running her hand along the custom kitchen island I'd installed myself. "You have amazing taste, Mark. I love a man who knows how to create a beautiful home." I noticed Mark didn't correct her assumption that he had done the renovations or that the house was his. I caught his eye across the room, expecting him to clarify, but he just gave me a pleading look that clearly said, "Not now." I let it slide, assuming he'd explain the situation to her privately. Their romance progressed at warp speed. Within 3 months of meeting, Mark announced they were engaged. I took him to lunch the next day to express my concerns. "Don't you think this is moving a little fast?" I asked gently. "You've only known each other for 3 months." "When you know," he replied with the confidence of someone deeply in love. "She's the one, Rachel. I've never been more certain of anything." I wanted to be supportive, so I swallowed my reservations. "I'm happy if you're happy," I said, raising my glass to toast his engagement. "Just make sure you're both on the same page about everything, including your living situation." He assured me he would talk to Brittany about the house ownership before the wedding. But as the wedding planning consumed their lives, That conversation apparently never happened. Mark and Brittany's wedding was far more lavish than I expected given his financial situation. They rented an upscale venue by the lake, hired a live band, and Brittany wore a designer dress that I later learned cost more than $3,000. During the reception, I overheard Brittany's mother commenting on how they had spared no expense despite Mark still rebuilding his finances after family tragedy. It was clear Brittany's family had contributed significantly to the wedding costs. As my gift, I gave them $10,000, money I had been saving for property investments but felt would help them start their marriage without wedding debt. Mark had tears in his eyes when I handed him the check. "You're always looking out for me," he said, hugging me tightly. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "Just be happy," I replied. "That's all I want." After the honeymoon, a 2-week trip to Hawaii that stretched Mark's credit cards to their limits, I noticed subtle changes in his behavior toward me. Our weekly dinners became monthly, then sporadic. When we did get together, Brittany was always present, steering conversations toward their future plans or her latest shopping discoveries. "We're thinking of redoing the guest bedroom," Brittany announced during one dinner 3 months after the wedding. "I'm thinking a coastal theme with seafoam green walls." I nearly choked on my wine. "That's a big project. Have you discussed this with your landlord?" I asked, giving Mark a pointed look. Before Mark could respond, Brittany laughed. "Landlord, it's our house, silly. Mark doesn't rent." Mark suddenly became very interested in his pasta, avoiding my eyes completely. "Right," I said, slowly waiting for Mark to correct her. When he didn't, I changed the subject, planning to address it with him privately. Later that night, I pulled Mark aside while Brittany was in the bathroom. "She doesn't know, does she?" I whispered. Mark ran his hand through his hair nervously. I tried to tell her a few times, but the timing was never right. Then the wedding planning took over, and now I don't know how to bring it up without her feeling like I've lied to her all this time. "But you have lied, Mark, by omission. The longer you wait, the worse it will be." I know, he sighed. "I'll tell her soon, I promise. Just let me handle it my way, okay?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to let Mark handle the situation. In retrospect, this was my first major mistake. Over the next few months, I watched as Brittany gradually took over their house. Each time I visited, something new had changed. The living room furniture I had carefully selected was replaced with modern pieces that matched Brittany's aesthetic. The warm yellow kitchen walls were now stark white. Family photos that had included me were conspicuously absent, replaced by glamorous wedding portraits and artsy photos of the couple. Brittany's attitude toward me also shifted subtly. Where she had once been welcoming and interested in getting to know me, she now seemed to barely tolerate my presence. She would check her watch frequently during our conversations, finding excuses to cut them short. "We really should get going," she'd say to Mark, even when they had nowhere specific to be. "We have that thing, remember?" During family gatherings, I noticed Brittany positioning herself as the primary hostess, introducing the house as our place and making comments about how she had transformed it from a bachelor pad into a real home. Each time, I would look to Mark, waiting for him to set the record straight, but he never did. The distance between my brother and me grew wider with each passing week. Where we had once texted daily, I now went days without hearing from him. My calls went to voicemail more often than not. When I asked if everything was okay, his responses were brief and vague. "Just busy with married life," he'd text, still adjusting to the new normal. I missed my brother terribly, but told myself to give them space. The newlywed phase would pass and eventually things would stabilize. In the meantime, I focused on my business and tried not to take the distance personally. But a small voice in the back of my mind warned that something fundamental had changed in our relationship, something that might never go back to the way it was before. 6 months after the wedding, I decided it was time to have a serious discussion about the property. Tax season was approaching, and I needed to review some paperwork with Mark regarding the house. I texted him to let him know I'd be stopping by, but when I didn't receive a response after several hours, I decided to go anyway. We were family after all. I didn't need a formal invitation to visit. When I arrived and unlocked the front door with my key, I was shocked at what I found. The entire first floor had been gutted and remodeled. The hardwood floors I had painstakingly restored were gone, replaced with trendy large format tiles. The cozy breakfast nook had been demolished to expand the kitchen, and all the charming built-in bookshelves in the living room had been removed to create a more open concept, as Brittany later explained. I stood in the entryway genuinely speechless at the transformation. This wasn't just redecorating, this was major structural renovation that had been done without my knowledge or consent as the property owner. The character and charm that had drawn me to invest in the house in the first place had been replaced with a generic modern aesthetic that looked like it came straight from a trendy home magazine. While I was still processing the changes, Mark came down the stairs and froze when he saw me. "Rachel, I didn't know you were coming over today," he said, his voice tight with anxiety. "I texted you," I replied, still looking around in disbelief. "Mark, what happened to the house? You've completely changed everything." Before he could answer, Brittany appeared behind him, her expression shifting from surprise to annoyance when she saw me. "Rachel, didn't expect to see you today," she said coolly. "Do you like what we've done with the place? It's finally starting to feel like our home rather than just Mark's bachelor pad." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "These are major renovations, structural changes. How did you pay for all this?" Mark looked uncomfortable. "Brittany's parents helped us out a bit, and we got a good deal with the contractor." "You should have discussed this with me first," I said, trying to keep my voice level. Brittany laughed. "Why would we need to discuss our home renovations with you, Mark, and I don't need your approval for our design choices?" The tension in the room was palpable. Mark stepped forward, placing himself between us. "Britt, could you give us a minute? I need to talk to Rachel about something." Brittany looked between us suspiciously but nodded and went upstairs. As soon as she was out of earshot, I turned to Mark. "She still doesn't know, does she? After 6 months of marriage, you still haven't told her that you don't own this house?" Mark's shoulders slumped. "I tried a few times, but it never seemed like the right moment. And then when her parents offered to help with renovations as a wedding gift, it just got more complicated." "Complicated, Mark? You've let your wife make permanent changes to a property that isn't hers. Do you have any idea what position you've put me in? I could be legally liable for these unauthorized renovations." I know, he said, running his hands through his hair. "I've dug myself into a hole here. But please, Rachel, don't tell her yet. Let me do it. I just need a little more time." "How much more time, Mark? It's been over a year since you moved in, and the terms of our agreement were clear. This was temporary, 1 to 2 years max, while you got back on your feet. Things are different now. I'm married. We're building a life here." "You're building a lie," I corrected him. "And the longer it goes on, the worse it will be when the truth comes out." After much discussion, I reluctantly agreed to give Mark 2 weeks to come clean with Brittany about the house ownership. He promised he would tell her, and then they would discuss their options, either buying the house from me at fair market value or finding their own place. But 2 weeks came and went, with no resolution. Mark called with excuse after excuse. Brittany was stressed about work. They had a fight about finances. Her grandmother was ill. The timing wasn't right. Each time I extended the deadline, believing my brother would eventually do the right thing. Meanwhile, Brittany's territorial behavior about the house intensified. She created an Instagram account dedicated to their home renovation journey, posting before and after pictures with captions like, "Turning our first house into a dream home, 1 room at a time, and so blessed to have a place to call our own." The final straw came 3 months after my initial discovery of the renovations. While scrolling through social media, I came across a local lifestyle magazine's page featuring a home tour article. There was Brittany proudly showing off her redesigned living room, claiming full credit for the vision and execution. The article quoted her saying, "My husband and I were fortunate enough to purchase this diamond in the rough right before property values in the area skyrocketed. We've put our hearts and souls into making it our forever home." I felt physically ill reading her blatant lies. But what hurt more was discovering through a comment Brittany had made on the post that she had been portraying me as the jealous unmarried sister who couldn't afford her own place. "My husband's sister is always hanging around," she had written in response to someone asking about family support. "I think she's a bit envious of what we've created here since she's still in a tiny apartment. Single at 40 can be tough." Not only was she lying about owning my property, but she was also misrepresenting my life and success to make herself look better. The disrespect and audacity were stunning. I had reached my breaking point. The day after discovering the magazine article, I decided to confront the situation head-on. I gathered all the property documentation, the deed tax records, insurance papers, and the original agreement I had drafted when Mark moved in, and drove to the house unannounced. When I arrived, I was surprised to find several expensive cars parked in the driveway and on the street. As I approached the front door, I could hear multiple voices and laughter coming from inside. I rang the doorbell, and after a moment, Brittany opened the door, her smile dropping when she saw me. "Rachel," she said flatly, "this isn't a good time. We're hosting a little get-together." I noticed she was dressed up wearing a stylish outfit and full makeup. Behind her, I could see about a dozen women with wine glasses in hand, all looking curiously toward the door. "This won't take long," I said, stepping forward before she could close the door. "I just need to discuss something important with you and Mark." "Mark isn't here," she replied tersely. "He's working late tonight. Can't this wait until tomorrow?" As I stood in the entryway, I overheard one of the women say, "Is this the famous house tour we've been hearing about? Your Instagram renovations are absolutely stunning." Suddenly it clicked. Brittany was hosting a home tour for her friends, showing off her property and renovations. My property. My blood began to boil, but I maintained my composure. "I'd be happy to join the tour," I said, stepping fully into the house, despite Brittany's attempt to block my entry. "I'd love to see what you've been posting about online." The next hour was excruciating. I followed the group from room to room, listening as Brittany explained her vision for each space and how she had transformed this outdated house into a magazine-worthy home. Her friends oohed and ahed over the kitchen island that I had installed, the custom bathroom vanities I had commissioned, and the backyard landscaping I had designed. The previous owner had no sense of style, Brittany told them, as they admired the newly remodeled main bathroom. Everything was so dated and basic. I bit my tongue, reminding myself that confronting her in front of her friends would only make the situation more volatile. I needed to wait for the right moment. That moment came when I overheard Brittany in the kitchen speaking to two of her friends who had lagged behind the main group. "Mark's sister is here somewhere," she said in a lowered voice. "That's her lurking by the living room. She's always showing up unannounced. Classic spinster behavior. She's jealous of what we have. No husband, no children, just her sad little apartment and her boring job. She tries to live vicariously through us." The two women made sympathetic noises as Brittany continued. "I try to be nice for Mark's sake, but between us, she's pathetic. 40 years old and still trying to insert herself into our lives because she has nothing of her own." That was it. The last thread of my patience snapped. I walked directly into the kitchen, startling Brittany and her friends. "Actually, I'm 35, not 40, I said calmly. "And I don't have nothing of my own. In fact, I own quite a bit, including this house." The kitchen went silent. Brittany's friends looked between us, clearly sensing the tension. "Ladies, would you excuse us for a moment?" Brittany said with a forced laugh. "Family stuff." Once they had retreated to the living room, Brittany turned to me, her face flushed with anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing coming into my home and embarrassing me in front of my friends?" "Your home," I repeated. "Brittany, this has gone on long enough. This is my house. I own it. I let Mark live here temporarily after our parents died, but he never owned it. And he never told you the truth, apparently." Brittany's expression went from anger to confusion to disbelief. "That's ridiculous," she scoffed. "Mark and I live here. We've been renovating for months. His name is on the mailbox." "His name might be on the mailbox, but mine is on the deed," I replied, opening my folder to show her the documentation. "I'm the legal owner of this property. Always have been." Brittany stared at the papers, her face growing pale. At that moment, the front door opened and Mark walked in. He stopped abruptly when he saw us in the kitchen, the property documents spread out on the counter, and the group of confused women in the living room. "What's going on?" he asked, though his expression told me he already knew. "Your sister is trying to claim she owns our house," Brittany said, her voice shaking. "Tell her she's wrong, Mark. Tell her this is our home." The look on my brother's face, guilt, shame, fear, confirmed everything for Brittany before he could even speak. "Mark," she pressed, her voice rising. "Tell her." "Brittany, I can explain," he started, his voice weak. "It's complicated." "Is it true?" she demanded. Do you not own this house? Have you been lying to me our entire relationship? Mark looked at me pleadingly, as if I could somehow save him from this moment of truth, but I had enabled his deception long enough. Yes, he finally admitted. Rachel owns the house. She let me stay here after Mom and Dad died. I was going to tell you, but then we got engaged so quickly and I didn't want to ruin things. And then one lie led to another and… Brittany cut him off with a scream of frustration that sent her friends scurrying to gather their purses and make quick exits. Within minutes, the three of us were alone in the house, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. So all this time, Brittany said, her voice dangerously quiet. All the renovations, all the money my parents contributed, all the posts and photos and pride I took in creating our home. It was never ours. I'm sorry, Mark said weakly. I should have told you. You're damn right you should have told me, she shouted, tears streaming down her face. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I've been showing off a house that isn't mine to everyone I know. My parents spent $20,000 helping us renovate a property we don't even own. I never asked them to do that, Mark protested. Because you were too much of a coward to tell the truth, she fired back. I stood quietly letting them work through the initial shock. But when Brittany turned her anger toward me, I was unprepared for the venom in her words. And you, she said, pointing an accusatory finger at me, you let this go on. You knew I thought this was our house, and you said nothing. You just sat back and watched me make a fool of myself. What kind of sick game were you playing? This isn't a game, Brittany. I gave Mark numerous opportunities to tell you the truth. I've been asking him to come clean for months. This isn't my deception, it's his. Convenient to blame it all on him, she sneered. You're just jealous that he found happiness while you're alone. You probably wanted this to blow up all along so you could have your precious brother all to yourself again. Her words stung not because they were true, but because they revealed how Mark must have been portraying me to her all this time. What had he been saying about me behind my back to make her think I was some sad, clingy spinster? That's enough, I said firmly. I understand you're upset and feeling betrayed right now. That's completely valid. But your issue is with Mark, not me. He's the one who lied to you. Both of you can go to hell, Brittany spat. I'm calling my parents. They'll want to know their money was wasted on someone else's property. As she stormed upstairs, Mark collapsed onto a kitchen stool, his head in his hands. I've really messed up, haven't I? He said quietly. Yes, I replied, no longer having the energy to soften the blow. You have. And now we all have to deal with the consequences. For a week after the disastrous home tour revelation, I heard nothing from Mark or Brittany. My calls and texts went unanswered. I consulted with my attorney about the unauthorized renovations and was advised to formally document the situation and send an official notice to vacate the property. While I had no desire to evict my own brother, I needed to protect myself legally, given the substantial unauthorized changes to my property. I prepared the necessary paperwork and drove to the house the following Saturday morning. I knocked on the door, paperwork in hand, my stomach in knots at the confrontation I knew was coming. After a minute, Brittany answered. She looked terrible, eyes puffy from crying, hair unwashed, wearing what appeared to be pajamas even though it was nearly noon. When she saw me, her expression hardened. What do you want now? She asked coldly. Come to gloat. No, Brittany. I've come with some paperwork we need to discuss. I tried to keep my tone neutral and professional. Is Mark home? He's not here, she replied. He's staying at a hotel. We're not exactly on speaking terms right now, thanks to you. I sighed. This situation is not my creation, Brittany. I'm sorry you're hurting, but I need to address the legal aspects of the property. Legal aspects, she repeated, her voice rising. You mean you're kicking us out of our home? It's not your home, I reminded her gently. And yes, I need you to vacate the property within 30 days. I've brought the formal notice and… You can't do this, she shouted, cutting me off. We've lived here for over a year. We've put thousands of dollars into renovations. You can't just throw us out. Actually, I can. I'm the legal owner, and the renovations were done without my permission. Technically, that's property damage I could pursue legally, but I'm not going to do that. I just need you to leave within the time frame specified by law. Brittany's face contorted with rage. This is all about control for you, isn't it? You couldn't stand to see Mark happy and independent, so you had to blow up his marriage. That's not what happened, and you know it, I replied, working to keep my voice steady. Mark created this situation by lying to you. I'm simply protecting my property rights. You're pathetic, she spat. A bitter, pathetic 40-year-old leech with nothing better to do than ruin other people's lives. Get out of my house. Get out. I couldn't help it, I burst out laughing. The sheer absurdity of her calling me a leech while living rent-free in my house and then telling me to get out of my own property was too much. What's so funny? She demanded, her face reddening further. You're telling me to get out of my own house, I explained, still chuckling. You have no legal right to be here without my permission, yet you're ordering me to leave. It's ironic, don't you think? This is my home, she insisted, her voice rising to a shriek. Mine and Mark's, we've made it ours. I shook my head, my amusement fading. No, Brittany, it's not, and you need to accept that reality. I'm giving you 30 days to find a new place, which is more than generous given the circumstances. Try to make me leave, she challenged, stepping closer to me with such intensity that I instinctively backed up. Just try it. I don't need to try, I replied calmly. The law is on my side. This notice is just a formality. I held out the papers toward her. She slapped them out of my hand, sending them scattering across the porch. Get off my property before I call the police and report you for trespassing. I sighed and bent down to gather the papers. Brittany, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I understand you're upset. I'm calling the police, she interrupted, pulling her phone from her pocket. You have 30 seconds to leave before I dial. Go ahead, I said, straightening up with the papers. Call them. I'll wait right here. Her eyes widened slightly. She clearly hadn't expected this response, but her pride wouldn't let her back down now. With shaking fingers, she dialed 911. Hello, yes, I need to report an intruder at my home, she said, her eyes locked on mine. She's refusing to leave and harassing me. Yes, I've asked her multiple times to leave my property. The address is 426 Maple Street. I waited patiently as she completed the call, then took a seat on the porch swing. Brittany remained standing in the doorway, arms crossed, glaring at me. They'll be here in 10 minutes, she informed me smugly. Hope you enjoy explaining to the police why you're trespassing. I'll enjoy explaining to them that I own this house, I replied evenly, and showing them the deed to prove it. We waited in tense silence for the police to arrive. Mark's car pulled into the driveway just as the patrol car parked at the curb. He jumped out looking panicked. What's going on? He asked, rushing up the porch steps. Brittany texted me that you were harassing her. He looked between us, taking in my calm demeanor and Brittany's agitated state. Your wife called the police on me for trespassing on my own property, I explained. They're here now to sort it out. Mark's face went pale. You called the cops on my sister, he asked Brittany incredulously. She wouldn't leave our home, Brittany insisted. She's trying to evict us. Two police officers approached the porch, a middle-aged man and a younger woman. The male officer spoke first. We received a call about an unwanted person on the property, he said. Can someone explain what's happening here? Brittany immediately launched into her version of events. This woman is harassing me in my own home. She keeps claiming she owns the house, but my husband and I have been living here for over a year. We've renovated it, maintained it. The female officer interrupted gently. Ma'am, what's your name in relation to this woman? I'm Brittany Wilson. This is my sister-in-law, Rachel Wilson. And you, the officer asked, turning to me. Rachel Wilson. I'm the legal owner of this property, I said, opening my folder. I have the deed, property tax statements, insurance documents, and mortgage paperwork all in my name. I allowed my brother Mark to live here temporarily after our parents passed away, but the house has always been mine. I handed the officer the documentation. He reviewed it carefully while his partner kept a watchful eye on the increasingly tense situation. Mark, tell them, Brittany urged. Tell them we live here. Mark looked miserable. We do live here, but Rachel owns the house. I never told you because I was afraid to lose you. I'm so sorry, Brittany. The look of betrayal on Brittany's face was profound. The male officer finished reviewing my documents and handed them back to me. Miss Wilson, he said to me, These appear to be in order. You are indeed the legal owner of this property." He then turned to Brittany. "Mrs. Wilson, I understand this is upsetting, but it appears there's been a misunderstanding between you and your husband about the ownership of this house. Miss Rachel Wilson has the legal right to be here, and she has the right to issue an eviction notice if she chooses to." "This is ridiculous," Brittany cried. "We've put thousands into this place. My parents helped pay for renovations." "That would be a civil matter between you and your husband," the female officer explained gently. "If you made improvements to the property without the owner's consent, that's something you'd need to address separately. It doesn't change the ownership of the home." Brittany looked between the officers, Mark and me, seeming to finally understand the reality of the situation. Her face crumpled and she began to sob. "So we have nowhere to live now, just like that." "I've given you 30 days to find a new place," I said, softening my tone. "That's standard notice. I'm not throwing you out immediately." The male officer nodded. 30 days is the legal requirement. Miss Wilson is following proper procedure." Mark stepped forward and put his arm around Brittany's shoulders, but she shrugged him off violently. "Don't touch me. This is all your fault. You lied to me from the beginning." "I think we should go inside and discuss this privately," Mark suggested, looking embarrassed in front of the officers. "Actually," I interjected, "I need to formally serve you both with this notice to vacate. If you could sign here acknowledging receipt, we can all move forward." I held out the papers and a pen. Mark took them immediately and signed. After a moment of glaring at us all, Brittany snatched the pen and scrawled her signature as well. "We'll be going now," the male officer said. "If there are any further disputes, please try to resolve them civilly. Property matters like this are typically handled in court, not by police intervention." As the officers returned to their patrol car, an uncomfortable silence fell over the three of us. Finally, Mark spoke. "Rachel, can you give us some time to process this? We'll be out within 30 days, I promise." I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the whole ordeal. "That's all I'm asking for. I'm sorry it came to this, but you left me no choice." As I walked back to my car, I heard Brittany's voice, quieter now, but still audible. "I want a divorce, Mark. I can't believe you lied to me about something so important. I don't even know who you are anymore." I drove away with mixed emotions. Relief that the truth was finally out, sadness for my brother's failing marriage, and uncertainty about what this would mean for our relationship moving forward. The confrontation was over, but the aftermath was just beginning. The days following the police incident were filled with uncomfortable silence. Mark texted me once to confirm they had received the eviction notice and would comply with the 30-day timeline. Otherwise, no communication came from either him or Brittany. I respected their space while privately mourning what this situation had done to my relationship with my brother. 2 weeks into the 30-day period, I drove by the house to check on things and was alarmed to see a large dumpster in the driveway. Concerned about what they might be disposing of, I parked and approached the house. Before I could knock, Mark opened the door looking haggard and exhausted. "I saw your car," he explained simply. "Come in if you want." The interior of the house was in disarray. Boxes everywhere, furniture half-dismantled walls, showing patches where pictures had been removed. Mark led me to the kitchen, which was surprisingly intact. Coffee he offered already, moving to the coffee maker. "Sure," I replied, taking a seat at the counter. "What's with the dumpster?" Mark sighed heavily. "Brittany is taking what she considers hers and trashing what she doesn't want. She's not being particularly careful about it." "What does that mean exactly?" He grimaced. "She may have taken a hammer to the custom bathroom vanity, said if she couldn't have it, no one should." I closed my eyes briefly, trying to maintain my composure. "That's property damage, Mark." "I know. I've been trying to stop her when I can, but—" He trailed off, looking defeated. "We're living separately now. She comes by when I'm at work to get her things. Yesterday, I came home to find the living room walls had been spray-painted." I was speechless. The level of vindictiveness was shocking, even given the circumstances. "Where is she staying?" I asked finally. "With her parents. They're as angry as she is. They want to sue me for the money they put into the renovations." He placed a mug of coffee in front of me. "I don't blame them." "Have you talked to a lawyer?" He nodded. "Got one for the divorce proceedings. Brittany filed 3 days after the police came. He attempted a smile that looked more like a grimace. Shortest marriage in Wilson family history. Mom and Dad would be so proud. The mention of our parents hit me hard. They'd understand that people make mistakes, Mark. Would they? Dad always said a man's word is his bond. I lied to my wife from day one. He stared into his coffee. I've been doing a lot of thinking and I realized this isn't just about the house. I've been lying about a lot of things. What do you mean? Mark took a deep breath. I've been hiding financial problems from both you and Brittany. I maxed out credit cards to pay for the wedding and honeymoon. I've been late on car payments. I even took out a personal loan to help cover the renovation costs when Brittany's parents' contribution wasn't enough. I was stunned. Mark, why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed, he admitted. You've always been so responsible, so successful. After Mom and Dad died, I felt like a failure. Then I met Brittany, and she looked at me like I was something special. I couldn't bear to disappoint her by admitting I was broke and living in my sister's house, so I pretended to be someone I wasn't, someone successful and established. And now I'm getting divorced, I'm in debt up to my eyeballs, and I've damaged my relationship with the one person who's always had my back. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I've been a terrible brother. Despite everything, my heart ached for him. You made mistakes, Mark. Big ones. But you're still my brother, and I still love you. Even after all this, I confirmed, though I have to say I'm not thrilled about the property damage. He winced. I'll help fix everything, I promise. Once I find a place and get settled, I'll come back and repair what Brittany destroyed. Speaking of finding a place, do you know where you're going when the 30 days are up? A friend from work is letting me crash on his couch until I can find an apartment I can afford. He hesitated. I know I have no right to ask for anything more from you, but is there any chance you could give me a little extra time, just until I can find something stable? Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. He was my brother after all and clearly struggling. But another part remembered how my generosity had been taken advantage of, how my property had been damaged, and how this whole situation had spiraled because I hadn't maintained clear boundaries. I can't, Mark, I said gently. Not because I don't want to help you, but because continuing this arrangement isn't healthy for either of us. You need a fresh start, and I need to reclaim my property. The best way I can help you now is by encouraging you to stand on your own feet. He nodded slowly. You're right. I need to fix my own messes for once. Over the next 2 weeks, I visited the house regularly to document the condition of the property and assist Mark with packing. Each visit revealed new damage from Brittany's vindictive departing gestures. Holes punched in walls, scratched hardwood in areas that hadn't been tiled over, doors removed from hinges. I documented everything carefully on the advice of my attorney, who suggested I might need to pursue legal action against Brittany for the property damage. During one of these visits, Mark confessed that he had hidden something else from me. Brittany found your spare key, he admitted. The one you keep in the garage. She's been coming in when neither of us is here. I changed the locks yesterday, but I think that's how she's been getting in to damage things. I was furious but tried to maintain my composure. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I was hoping to handle it myself. I didn't want to make things worse between you two. Mark, she's deliberately destroying my property. Things couldn't be worse. I know, he said, raising his hands defensively. I messed up. Again. I filed a police report about the vandalism and I gave them her parents' address. They're going to talk to her. The thought of involving the police again made my stomach turn, but I knew it was necessary. This had gone beyond petty revenge into criminal territory. The last week of the 30-day period was tense. Mark moved most of his belongings to his friend's place, leaving only a few essentials for his final days in the house. Brittany was served with a restraining order prohibiting her from entering the property after the police documented the extensive damage she had caused. The day before the official move-out date, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, I was surprised to hear Brittany's mother on the line. Rachel, this is Catherine, Brittany's mother. I hope you don't mind me calling. Not at all, I replied cautiously. What can I do for you? I wanted to apologize for my daughter's behavior, she said, her voice tight with emotion. What she's done to your property is inexcusable regardless of how hurt she was by Mark's deception. My husband and I had no idea she was vandalizing the house. Her apology caught me off guard. Thank you for saying that, Catherine. I appreciate it. We've convinced Brittany to seek therapy, she continued. The divorce and the house situation have brought up some concerning behavior patterns we've seen before. She's not well, Rachel. That doesn't excuse what she did, but I wanted you to know we're getting her help. I'm glad to hear that, I said sincerely. Mental health issues were nothing to take lightly, and it helped explain, if not excuse, some of Brittany's extreme reactions. We'd also like to discuss compensation for the damage, Catherine added. Once you have estimates for repairs, please send them to us. We feel responsible as her parents, and we want to make this right. By the time the 30-day eviction period ended, Mark had moved out completely, leaving behind a house that bore little resemblance to the charming property I had once renovated with such care. The emotional toll of the past months had been immense, but as I stood in the empty, damaged house, I felt a strange sense of peace beginning to emerge. The worst was over. Now the healing of both the property and my relationship with my brother could begin. The months following Mark and Brittany's departure were filled with contractors' insurance claims and renovation work. The damage Brittany had caused was extensive, requiring nearly $40,000 in repairs. True to their word, Brittany's parents covered most of the costs, sending me a cashier's check with a heartfelt apology letter after receiving the contractor's estimates. Repairing the physical damage to the house was straightforward, time-consuming and expensive but doable. Repairing my relationship with Mark proved more challenging. For the first month after he moved out, our communication was limited to practical matters regarding the house and his remaining possessions. The easy closeness we had once shared seemed irrevocably damaged. 3 months after the eviction, Mark asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, curious and hopeful that we might begin to mend our relationship. When I arrived at the cafe, I almost didn't recognize my brother. He had lost weight, cut his hair short, and there was a seriousness in his expression I wasn't used to seeing. Thanks for meeting me, he said as I sat down across from him. I've been wanting to talk to you properly, but I needed to get some things in order first. What kind of things? I asked. My life, basically. He gave a small, self-deprecating smile. After everything fell apart, I realized I needed to make some major changes. I've been seeing a therapist twice a week. I joined a financial management program. I even got a second job to start paying down my debts. That's great, Mark. I'm proud of you. Don't be proud yet, he cautioned. I've got a long way to go, but I'm here because I want to apologize. Really apologize, not just say sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table to me. What's this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a handwritten letter. I looked at him questioningly. It's the first payment, he explained. I calculated the fair market rent for the time I lived in your house, plus an estimate of the damage that wasn't covered by Brittany's parents' payment. I can't pay it all at once, but I worked out a monthly amount I can manage. I was speechless. This was not the brother I knew. The one who had always taken the easy way out, who had avoided responsibility. I know it doesn't fix what I did, he continued when I didn't speak. The money isn't really the point. It's about taking responsibility for my actions and the hurt I caused you. You've been bailing me out my whole life, Rachel, and instead of being grateful, I took advantage of your generosity. I felt tears welling in my eyes. Mark, I don't need the money. But I need to give it to you, he insisted. For me, for my recovery. My therapist calls it making amends. I need to clean up the messes I've made if I want to move forward. I nodded, understanding his need for this symbolic restitution. I accept your apology and the payment. But mostly, I'm just glad to see you doing better. I'm not sure better is the right word yet, he said thoughtfully. But I'm heading in that direction. The divorce was finalized last week, by the way. It was. Surprisingly civil in the end. Brittany's in treatment too. Turns out she has some pretty serious issues she never dealt with. Over the next hour, we talked more openly than we had in years. Mark shared how he had spent most of his adult life feeling like he was living in my shadow, the successful, responsible older sister who always had everything together. Rather than being inspired by my example, he had resented it and tried to take shortcuts to appear equally successful. I wanted to be someone Brittany could be proud of, he admitted. Someone who owned a nice house, who had his life together. I thought if I pretended long enough, maybe it would become true. You didn't need to pretend, I told him. You have so many qualities I've always admired. Your creativity, your ability to connect with people, your sense of humor. Not everyone measures success by property ownership and financial stability. But those things do matter, he countered. I see that now. Security matters, honesty matters, following through on commitments matters. Those are the things I'm working on now. As we parted ways that day, I felt a glimmer of hope that eventually we might rebuild our relationship into something healthier than before, something based on honesty, mutual respect, and appropriate boundaries. Over the following months, I focused on healing my own emotional wounds from the ordeal. I had always prided myself on being the strong one, the one who held everything together, but the betrayal by my brother had shaken me deeply. Through my own therapy, I came to recognize how my enabling behavior had contributed to the situation. By always being there to catch Mark when he fell, I had inadvertently prevented him from developing the skills to stand on his own. 6 months after our coffee shop meeting, the renovations on the house were finally complete. Rather than finding new tenants, I decided to sell the property. It held too many painful memories now, and I couldn't imagine entrusting it to anyone else after what had happened. The real estate market had improved significantly, and I stood to make a substantial profit despite all the drama. On the day I listed the house, I received a surprising message from Brittany asking if we could meet. Curious but cautious, I agreed to see her at a public park near my office. When she arrived, I barely recognized her. Gone was the perfectly styled hair and designer clothes. She looked simpler, more natural, and surprisingly more at peace. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, as she sat beside me on the park bench. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "But I'm glad you reached out." "I want to apologize," she said, getting straight to the point. "What I did to your house was unforgivable. I was so angry about being lied to that I wanted to hurt everyone involved, including you. It was childish and destructive, and I'm deeply sorry." "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "It means a lot to hear it directly from you." "I've been in intensive therapy," she continued. "Turns out I have some abandonment issues from my childhood that I never dealt with. When I found out about the house, it triggered something in me. But that's no excuse for how I behaved." "We all have our breaking points," I said. "I'm just glad you're getting help now." "I am, and part of my recovery is making amends where I can." She hesitated. "I know my parents covered the financial costs of the damage, but I wanted to apologize to you personally for the emotional toll my actions must have taken." We talked for nearly an hour, two women who had been positioned as enemies, finding common ground in our shared experiences with Mark and our respective journeys toward healing. By the time we parted ways, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. The house sold within 2 weeks of listing for well above asking price. I used part of the proceeds to expand my real estate business and invested the rest. Mark continued to send monthly payments, despite my assurances that it wasn't necessary, especially after the profitable sale. It's not about the money, he would insist. It's about keeping my word. A year after the police confrontation that had brought everything to a head, Mark invited me to dinner at his new apartment. It was small but neat, and he had furnished it with simple, tasteful pieces that reflected his artistic eye. On his refrigerator was a list of financial goals with several items already checked off. "I'm down to just one credit card now," he told me proudly. "And I'm making double payments on my car loan. Should have it paid off by the end of the year." "That's amazing, Mark. You've come so far." He smiled a genuine smile that reached his eyes. I had a good example to follow. I just needed to stop resenting it and start learning from it instead. As we ate dinner, Mark shared that he had been promoted at work and was taking night classes to improve his credentials. He was dating someone new, casually he emphasized, and for the first time in his adult life, he was completely transparent about his financial situation and living arrangements. "No more pretending to be something I'm not," he said. "If someone doesn't want me for who I actually am, they're not the right person for me." That night, as I drove home from Mark's apartment, I reflected on the painful journey we had both traveled over the past year. The house that had been the center of so much drama was now owned by a young family building their own memories within its walls. Mark was standing on his own feet, making responsible choices, and our relationship was slowly healing. Even Brittany seemed to be finding her way toward a healthier future. The experience had taught me powerful lessons about boundaries enabling and the sometimes painful necessity of allowing loved ones to face the consequences of their actions. By trying to protect Mark from hardship, I had inadvertently contributed to his stunted emotional growth. It was only when he was forced to confront the results of his choices that he began to truly mature. As for me, I learned that being strong doesn't mean carrying everyone else's burdens. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is step back and allow others the dignity of solving their own problems. True family support isn't about rescuing, it's about empowering each other to grow and thrive independently. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of your generosity? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about family relationships and the lessons we learn from life's challenging moments. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most important growth. I'm wishing you strength and clarity in all your relationships.